it's a cliche statement, but everybody has a story, and it's interesting to see how everyone like becomes who they are, like why people are the way they are.
What would you say that your whole goal is with what you do on a day-to-day basis?
I think I just want to show the beauty of the world to itself, show a fraction of what God might be doing in this world and how He might be working in people. For someone to be able to go through, and I have not, but for someone to be able to go through some really dark times and still see some light and goodness, that's probably very invaluable. There's so much we do not know. Actually, that's the biggest understatement of the year. Like, there's so much we don't know. Like, what we know is like a fraction of like, what it is. So like, we're looking at a very, 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 very narrow view. We see the sufferings of this world. We see the tragedies and the calamities, and we're like, how can God exist? But that's a very narrow POV. If there is a God, then His POV is infinite.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the 1% Podcast. As always, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for showing support, and thank you guys for showing love on every single episode. I have a guest with me today, Eric Jeng. Thank you, a storyteller, creative, but more importantly, the way I look at you as is a thinker, and that is really kind of the premise of this podcast. Is I really want to interview and talk to people that are incredibly introspective in their thoughts and the way that they tell their stories, but also being able to ask intricate questions. So I just want to say thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
I guess the first question that I have for you is if anybody
Go ahead. I was gonna say start off easy, but yeah.
If anybody that may have not been to any of your channels,
mm-hmm.
If you could describe and give a summary of what you do on a day-to-day basis, what would that be?
It's funny you ask that because I have been asking that question myself lately.
Really?
On the surface, I go around and I stop strangers on the street, or sometimes like we set up meetings, but like most of the time I don't know anything about the person, just like this. Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of exploring their humanity, exploring their stories, their personality, their thoughts, their opinions, their beliefs, anything where I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let's dive into that. So that's kind of what I do on the surface. Sometimes the stories that are uncovered are funny. Sometimes they're sad. Sometimes they're emotional. Sometimes they're heartfelt. Sometimes they're completely random. I think on a deeper level, I think on the deepest level, or a deeper level, and this is something that I'm continuing to try to understand myself. I think I'm like looking for stories of transformation, stories of when things have changed, stories like of people growing or changing, looking for stories of hope and redemption. I'm looking for stories that really just capture the essence of humanity and life and like what it means to be human, but like the heroic parts,
Yeah.
I think that's like the heart of it, or as close as I can think. And when I meet people with those stories, that's when I'm like, oh, okay, that's when I'm really dialed in.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's elements of that in every video I make.
Yeah. If you could just bring the mic just a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. I guess to add to that is there a part of the way that you like to grab stories and I've seen the videos that you've created and the transformation that have been good, is there anything about the negative side of things that you've also thought about? Because there's always the yin and the yang, right? Like you can always do the power transformation for good, but then there's that always other side where people use the negative events or the negative things that happen in their life for that transformation. And maybe in your personal life, have you noticed using that negative energy towards good? And if so, is it valuable?
What's the context from which you're asking this question?
essentially, you said that you use the power of transformation for good, and that's the thing that you are in the driving force of.
Yeah.
But what if somebody is surrounded by negative and they can't find that good?
Can you give an example?
Somebody that is constantly around. So if I have negative thoughts, right? If I'm depressed, if I have all these things and I can't bring myself out of this place,
Mm.
and I want to use this energy, this force for the greater good.
Mm-hmm.
But there seems to be no transformation that I can see directly. If somebody is trying to use that negative energy towards good, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, I mean, I think the the short answer is that it kind of depends, because there's probably some emotions like, okay, let me think about this. For me personally, whenever I experience a negative emotion, like maybe jealousy or regret or anger or bitterness or resentment or, some emotional pain, maybe like a breakup or something like that. In the past, what I used to do would try to numb those emotions, drinking pot, porn, whatever, pleasure to not feel those emotions. And sometimes I would even, some of the mental thought loop would be like, something is wrong with you to have these negative emotions, like, somehow you're less than. So those were a couple coping mechanisms, like either through pleasure or telling myself that wasn't enough, both of which avoided the actual problem. And so I think what uh, I've slowly learned to do is, you hear this all the time when you have any emotion, positive or negative, but let's focus on negative. You let it come. And depending on the emotion, sometimes talking with a friend might help. Sometimes journaling might help. Sometimes just sitting and meditating might help. Sometimes I'll sit on my couch and I'll just feel like where that emotion is in my body. Is it in my legs or heart or whatever? And I'll just kind of massage it. I don't know. It's kind of strange sometimes. I try to not linger in it for too long. It's almost like a black hole sometimes. And you want to just come to the event horizon of the black hole. You want to just stay there. And you want to just bring your awareness to it, let it marinate, and get curious about it. Like, oh, why is it here? And, what is it trying to tell me, right? Our emotions are signaling like, hey, maybe you need to look at this or that. And yeah, and after I've spent a good amount of time there, maybe 30 minutes, an hour, I don't know, whatever, at some point I'm like, okay, I've been in the void long enough. Let's get out of here. I've explored my jealousy, my bitterness, my resentment enough. Sometimes it's not even helpful to like go too much into it, because like there's just so many. Our inner world is just so mysterious sometimes that like spending more time is not going to help. So I just spend a little bit of time. I'm more of it, kind of process as much as I can, and at some point I'm like, okay, this isn't really helping anymore. Okay, let's get out of it, and then get on with your life. Go out, exercise, work out, get back to things.
Yeah. Because I know that there's sometimes like working on yourself and coming to that like I don't even know if it's an aha moment, but coming to that point where you radically want to change your life, or you want to become better, or we just ruminate in the pain, and it's just sometimes so crippling to sit there in that, and if that's the only thing that you've been exposed to, sometimes it's hard to cling on to the good moments or the good things of life if that's all you've seen. And I do wonder why, and I would love to know your perspective on this. Why do we avoid, if there's, within the YouTube video that you created, what was it about avoiding it? Obviously, yes, the short answer is it's easy, but was there a subconscious level there or unconscious way of thinking that created this, I'm here and I'm in my thoughts, but I'm uncomfortable? Was there like something on the unconscious level that you didn't want to be present with?
I'm like trying to use my conscious mind to answer that question. Gosh, these questions are hard. I don't was there something in my unconscious mind that I was avoiding?
Yeah, because I saw in the video that, you know, you would go on all these dates and the books that you would read and um, the things that you would see to try to become better at dating, but then you found yourself avoiding it more, and the more you would go on, the more you felt stuck, and the more you felt like voided.
Mm-hmm. It's
And
interesting how it's like void and avoid.
just one letter.
Yeah. Avoid, avoid the void, avoid. I wonder if fundamentally it's just like a fear of death.
Mm.
Maybe that's what it kind of feels like. There's something about when I feel my void. It's a very jarring experience because it's like, what the frick is this? Like, this doesn't feel natural. It almost feels maybe artificial or just like not real, and yet it's causing me so much discomfort or pain. And it almost feels like there's like a shadow like hitting you in the face, and you can't hit it back because like it's a shadow. So on an unconscious level, maybe it's just like a thought of like that there's like a sense of no hope, like there, like this thing that I can't see is always going to be hitting me, and there's nothing I can do about it. Yeah, so maybe that's partly why we try to avoid these things.
Sure. With the street interviews and, you know, the complexities of the human mind and how, you know, different we all are, what have been some of the, I guess, the discoveries that you've came about humans or humanity or about the mind?
It's funny, I get asked this question every time. I need to think more about this. I'm going to take this time to think about this.
Okay.
What have I learned about humans from all the humans I've talked to? I think because of my own sort of like hero's journey that I've kind of walked, I'm able to see it in other people as well. And I feel like at the end of the day, we're all on this like life in and of itself, due to its survival nature and like the difficulties of life, are constantly giving people challenges, and then people give themselves challenges because we're broken people. And the combination of that and the whole journey is, yeah, I don't know. It's just beautiful to see humans try to be humans. And so I believe in a God. And so like sometimes I'm like, hey, God, help me see this person the way you see them, right? And, you know, I'm not God, but sometimes if I can try to take a step back, it's just like, oh, wow, just all these humans trying, especially in New York, just grinding it out, like working through their stuff. And I don't know, something about this answer does not feel sufficient. I feel like one of my favorite questions that I like to ask after I've developed some comfort and rapport with a person is I just straight up ask them like, hey, do you have any events, experiences, people, moments that fundamentally like kind of changed your life or shifted things for you, shift your perspective? And those those are usually like, it's kind of, I feel like it's kind of cheating because I'm just like, because I don't know this person, right? So I don't know what question to ask all the time. But that's usually the one that, a man may reveal how his wife had a miscarriage, or a woman could talk about a really bad breakup, or losing her son. It's usually loss or pain, or some sort of revelatory kind of moment when they realize something about how the world works or is shaped. It's interesting to see how it's a cliche statement, but everybody has a story, and it's interesting to see how everyone like becomes who they are, like why people are the way they are. And the more you get into someone's story, you can always begin to pinpoint, okay, this is why they're that, and this is why they're that, this is why they're that. And so I don't know, it's just kind of it's hard to really place too much judgment or hate towards a person, because you're just like, okay, everything about them was kind of like life happening to them. So yeah.
Interesting. The judgment that usually clouds our minds, and to a fundamental level, we all do it. There was a newsletter that you wrote about judgment itself and how easy it is to fall into, oh, this person. You see it in New York City when you see the homeless, right? Like, oh, they're just the simple drug addict, or they're on the street because they made poor decisions. But the life that we don't know of that has led them to this point,
Yeah.
is something that I think NYC is the perfect example for that.
Right.
And I know that you grew up also in California, so I don't know what the relation is to the homelessness here and the homelessness over there. But seeing just even in saying something, that speaking your mind, you find, at least within myself, I find that I worry about the judgment of what others might think about what I'm about to say. And there comes to a point where, in what you're feeling and what you're thinking about, what you're saying, it's kind of stupid. It's kind of crazy
To judge.
And to judge ourselves in this manner. So how have you been able to kind of take that judgment out of your mind and kind of live in this openness?
I'm still learning. I don't think we can stop the judgments. It's a very automatic kind of behavior. We're probably evolutionarily wired to make quick snap judgments of people, right? To be like, okay, this is enemy, this is friendly or foe. Like, friend or foe, you got to be really quick on that assessment. I think for me, something that doing my interviews trains me to do is to be aware of my judgments. The thing is, a lot of times my judgments are kind of correct, but then I think I just try to learn to like hold them lightly. A lot of times I'll be interviewing somebody, just met them, we'll be talking like 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll be like, there will be a judgment in my head of like, this person's boring, which is a mean thing to say, but like, not boring, but like this person, like him and I or her and I just aren't connecting. Like some interviews it's just not clicking. Like something is just not there. And a lot of times I'm right, and it's just like, okay, no worries. Like, it's just, I'm not going to get a deep conversation with every single person I talk to, but it's important for me to be aware of that judgment, because the moment that comes in, like, that will then begin to shape everything I see about this person. And then like the conversation, the entire like interview could just like derail, because like I've just judged this person for not being interesting, whether that is or is not true. By like going into it, I will make it true, and then like I'll just undercut their answers. I'll like make false assumptions about them. So and for someone who's like livelihood is dependent on having good conversations, I'm like, okay, that's something I want to be aware of, because I want to maximize my chances of having a good interview, of having good conversation, because I've had times where I think, oh, this person's not interesting, and then at 10 minutes in, something clicks, and then we ask a question, and we get on a topic that's like really interesting. So that's happened enough for me to be like, not all my judgments are correct. So, yeah, I think I'm just being trained to just be aware of my judgments and be aware of how they're coloring how I see this person, because it could or could not be true. And if it's not true, I could be really screwing this whole situation.
What do you think makes somebody interesting? Like, what do you think makes a deep conversation? Like, if I was to have a recipe and I was to put all the ingredients in a good conversation or a deep conversation, what would that look like?
Honesty. Both sides are willing to be just real. And then an extension of that is a certain degree of vulnerability. Out of that realness comes a willingness to like share things that may be difficult or painful to talk about. And then communication, like, do both sides understand each other? Are they speaking the same language? Are they on the same page about things, similar worldviews, similar values? Honesty, communication, vulnerability. What was the question? What makes an interesting conversation?
Yeah, like what makes a deep, interesting conversation for you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is also just like life experiences. Has this person have both parties gone through some stuff? Usually it's like when people have gone through stuff, they have like a lot to talk about. I usually try to stay away from like high schoolers and college kids, just because they're still very much discovering themselves, and they're all going to say, just basically talk about how they're discovering themselves and how they don't really know what they want to do with their lives. And a lot of them haven't really gone through like crucible moments. So like there's not a ton of depth. Not always, but a lot of the times I find that, usually folks well into their 20s or 30s and older usually have like fruit and like stuff to talk about, like things to marinate in.
Yeah. There's a couple ways of where I want to go with this question, but do you think that we lack the intimacy or connection in today's society? With the way social media is, the way the phones are.
Tell me more. What do you mean?
Do you think that we lack those uncomfortable conversations as humans? The conversations that need to be had. And intimacy, as you know, isn't just on like a physical level, it's an emotional level, it's a spiritual level. Do you think that we lack that and or connection with our peers in today's society, with social media, with the dating apps? Because it's easy to be superficial about, who you are, right? But the intimacy is on under the veil, right? It's under the hood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to like think, like compare to maybe our parents' generation, our grandparents' generations.
Yeah.
Because like the initial thought, and this is the thought that everyone kind of says, is like, yes, we do lack intimacy, and we're behind our screens, and people don't know how to communicate with each other anymore and stuff like that. And I think there is truth in that. But then also like I think about like my grandparents and think about how even my parents as well, how they fundamentally lacked some, not communication skills, but just communication channels. Like they didn't. I remember like my grandfather, like on his like in the hospital, like on his deathbed. My mom was telling me a story of how like he was just kind of reflecting on his life, and then like he was like, yeah, I do love your grandmother. And I was like, and she was like kind of surprised by that, and my grandmother and my mom, because like he never really said that. I was like, what the freak? Like, they I don't know. It's like my grandfather probably didn't tell that to my grandmother a ton. Um, so is that a reflection of lack of intimacy? I don't know, but I don't know. I think humans have always maybe lacked intimacy. It's always been a struggle. I think it's probably exacerbated by screens and mm, avoidant whatever sort of behavior. But I think in the past, people, this is also generalization, but probably struggled more with like um, discomfort and survival and like wars and pains and like I don't know, you get a toothache and then your life probably sucks because there's no dentist back, you know. So like we're not distracted by like pain. That's kind of getting in the way of like us getting to our deeper selves, but we are distracted by other things. So, anyways, in short, yes, but I think that's always been the case.
Well, in that example with your grandma and your grandpa and your grandpa, from the outside looking in, I think it would, from what it sounds like, that maybe there was a lack of vulnerability, because intimacy and vulnerability and transparency are different things, right? Like transparency is, in a lack of a better term, allowing you to see the flesh. Like there's no clothes, there's no, it's just my soul, it's my being, it's my essence, it's my spirit. And I'm allowing you to see right through that.
Yeah. I think you're right. Probably a lack of vulnerability. I know, especially like men in Asian cultures, maybe men in general, vulnerability is a difficult thing.
Yeah, I've definitely been. I've realized more as I get older that it's easier for me to be vulnerable with a stranger. Like it's easier for me to be vulnerable with you rather than somebody I love.
Yeah.
Because there's the essence of, once you share this, you know that either may want, one, you may never see them again, or two, the limited contact that you guys might have after.
Really? That's what you think?
That's truly what I think.
Are you sure those are friends that you should be having in the first place?
Well, I guess it's just it's not on their part, it's on, I feel like it's on mine, right? It's my duty as a friend, as a partner, as a romantic other, to share those. It's, I shouldn't be afraid to hold back, right? Like I shouldn't I should feel the fire and I should feel getting close, right? But in this part, I shouldn't be afraid of getting burned, or I shouldn't be afraid of touching the porcupine, right, and getting spiked, because I should be, if I love you, if I care about you, I should be able to share these things to you. And there's also the other spectrum, or the other side, where it's like, yes, that person should be able to be receiving and willing to listen to what you're telling them. But there's a subconscious fear, I believe, that the more I speak with my therapist, that when I've known somebody for some time, there's certain things that I disclose because I feel like I don't want them to know who I am, or what I am, or what I'm thinking, or how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I think it also depends on the friends. I feel like, at least for me, I have different friends for different spheres of my life. Some are more spiritual friends, some are more emotional friends, some are more intellectual friends. And so I think for a friendship, once you kind of get into a certain groove, it would be a little bit strange. Like if you're like, I have a lot of friends from business school, and so they're all very intellectually minded, driven people. And so for me to suddenly get emotional with them would be a little strange, and I do kind of generally avoid that. But then with like my close high school friends, for example, like it's very easy for me to get emotional or be more vulnerable with them, versus like intellectual or a mental or whatever. So it also depends on the friendship.
Yeah. Do you believe that the partner, like how would you categorize your romantic partner? Do you believe that they should be all? Like if you're in a relationship, um, do you believe that your partner should be all of those things?
Yeah, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical. Yeah.
It seems though, as men in society, that that emotional side doesn't always get fulfilled.
Mm.
And how can I guess where I would want to go with this is how can we lean into that vulnerability and that transparency?
Man, I wish I knew. I haven't been in a serious relationship in a long time, and possibly because I don't lean into my emotional, vulnerable side enough. Um, I think, the more you do the inner work, the more you come to a place where you feel like you are enough just as you are, and the more you just believe that you are fully loved, all of those other things will kind of fall into place. And then just, I think there's a little bit of practice as well, like practicing being vulnerable and communicating vulnerably, especially if that's something that you never saw modeled by your parents. That might help a little bit as well. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's something that I have a feeling that I could get better at as well. Because it's not something that like I can intentionally be like, okay, I want to be more emotional and vulnerable with this person, but like actually I'm still not, because like I just haven't developed a greater level of awareness of what that even means to be more emotional and vulnerable.
Do you think it's also on the other person to allow that space?
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
How much
Some
do you
people
think
can
it's
bring
on
it up.
you? How much do you think it's on you, and how much do you think it's on the other person? And is there like an intertwine between the two?
Yeah, I think both parties are involved for sure. Like if one's completely closed off, it's not going to work.
Yeah. As we were on the topic of vulnerability and transparency, and basically what it's like to be a man, what is, in your definition, something
Masculinity. Oh God.
that's where I was gonna go with this. What to you, or what is masculinity to you?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. I like recently made this video with this guy who painted his nails and said that he discovered his masculinity by painting his nails, and sort of equated masculinity with self-expression and confidence. But then was like, you could be feminine and also expressive and confident. I had a friend tell me that masculinity was kind of more about like protecting and defending, providing. I think that kind of makes sense. Like you don't necessarily, the feminine is kind of more nurturing and caring. I'm thinking all like cavemen. That's how I'm kind of thinking about this, and I feel like the when the jaguar came, it was probably instinctually the man that would pick up the club and go attack it. So whatever that is, I think is maybe closer to the essence of masculinity.
Yeah, it's something I wonder about myself. It's always on my mind because the reason why this question came up is because I tried to figure out not only like what it is, but am I somebody who's masculine? And I think a lot of people, as that definition gets misconstrued, is there's so many ways you could pull that definition. There's always like an underlying self-reflection in, am I a masculine, or am I a masculine man, and what it's being portrayed as. But I'm not sure if it, I feel like it's just such a like a one, it's so much perception based, and so much like this is what it looks like, or the caveman example or the jaguar example. But obviously we're different than those two. the animal and the evolution of cavemen. Like we're so much different now.
We are, but we also aren't as well, right? Like I think humans were very ingrained automatic behaviors. I think um, I think as men we've probably lost sight of what it means to protect uh, women. You know, um, I'm thinking about like ways in which in past relationships I didn't take into account like enough like their side or empathize with their side or actually cared more about them rather than my own whatever desires, right? So that's a form of failed protection. But then on the worst end of that spectrum, it's like things like assault, right? That like uh, that's probably the least masculine thing you could do, I guess. Attack someone who's yeah. And so, but sorry, to go back to what you're saying that you wonder, am I masculine enough? Um, why do you want to be more masculine?
Because I feel like I lack the assertiveness. I feel like I don't have much. My common sense is very much not there. Um, I feel like sometimes I lack the assertiveness. Um, I was raised for mostly by my mother. My dad was there for sure. Um, and I, had ironically had a deep conversation with him the other day about just everything, kind of unpacking that. But I feel like I'm learning to be masculine now, and as a 25-year-old man, you should know, to some degree, right? But I fail or lack in certain situations the assertiveness, the leadership, the trying to find a way. And I want to be that for my kids. And I think the only way you can be that for your kids is to be that yourself. And like it's shown up in other areas in my life where I was supposed to lead, I was supposed to be assertive, and I failed. And now I'm on the quest to understand how to be more of a man. Um, because I don't like that feel. I don't like those feelings. I don't like the feeling of, well, yeah, I am a man biologically and physically, but am I really a man? Because I lack those social skills in certain areas, and that's happened in certain moments where I felt emasculated. And that's
Been there. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I'd be curious, like if women kind of understand this kind of thing that men kind of face or go through a struggle with. I wonder what the female equivalent to this is.
yeah. I don't know what the female equivalent would be to emasculation because it's
Probably beauty, because they're prized most for their beauty.
yeah.
So I would imagine that, which is interesting because like they're being prized for something they kind of don't have a ton of control over, whereas we're being prized over something we do have a decent amount of control over, like our general uh, emotional IQ, social prowess, leadership skills, assertiveness, confidence. These are all things that you can grow on. Anyways, but like I think that fundamentally creates a slightly different experience. But first off, I think 25 is you're probably comparing yourself to your peers, I'm guessing, who you think are in a more assertive place than you or something. And that's great. That's fine. At least like it's good to compare yourself to people who are better than you and to be like, hey, this is something I can grow in this area. Um, I think because that's also something that I kind of like, after my breakup, when I was 27, like went on sort of a similar journey as you. And I remember like I would go and take improv classes, and in the beginning I was not very good. And we have these shows, and like I would just be not entertaining or not funny or just stale or like just in my head about things. And afterwards I would just I would journal about it, and I'd just be like, dude, I'm so bad. This is like, and then eventually I got better at it. The more classes I took, I guess what I'm trying to say is like what I've learned over time. Yes, I have gotten to know myself more. I have become more assertive and confident because that's just a function of putting yourself in challenging situations, right? You just kind of have to keep doing that. Putting yourself in situations that you can fail, and you don't fail, or you do fail and you learn, but you just continue to put yourself in challenging situations. You will just naturally begin to come more fully into yourself, while also letting go of any bad habits, or if you're smoking and drinking or whatever, trauma, dealing with that stuff as well. But then also challenging yourself. That process in of itself will just form you. I still go through that moments now, like where I will feel emasculated. Maybe it'll be like, I don't know, maybe I'll be approaching a woman for an interview and she blows me off or something. Maybe I'm like in a meeting with like CEOs or CFOs and just like really high caliber individuals, and that will make me feel kind of like, ooh, emasculated. And what I've learned now over time, I think, whereas before, what I feel from you when you talk about it is a sort of a little bit of gloom, a little bit of heaviness, like, oh man, like I am not who I am supposed to be, like that kind of sentiment, which is both, I think, true and untrue. Like you're right where you're supposed to be. The very fact that you're aware of where you are and that you're on this journey, that you're right where you're supposed to be. But yes, you are not who you are. And that's good, because like, I mean, there's a lot of growth potential. But I guess what I would present as another way, an additional way to kind of approach where you are, is also a little bit more play, a little bit more looseness with it. Masculinity doesn't have to be so rigid. It doesn't have to be so like if I don't do this, I will like fundamentally lose myself, and my destiny will not be, that kind of heroic kind of like side to it. That's all great, but you got to bring in some like, it's a process, and like there's life and there's joy, and like no one's really thinking about it as much as you are in terms of like your own masculine, how not masculine you are or whatever. Everyone's got their own problems. So I guess what I'm saying is like when it comes down, when I feel that sort of sense of like severe deficiency with my masculinity or something, I'm just like, oh, interesting. Like this is another area I can grow in. This is great. And kind of play with it as opposed to like letting it depress myself so much. Because I've faced that, I've felt that so many times that I'm just like, it's both true and not true. I don't know. Maybe there is some truth into it, but then there's also like, it's also like you kind of just are who you are too. And I think over time you kind of begin to learn like the things that are just who you are. Like, oh, I'm just not that kind of person. That's totally cool. And then you learn, oh wait, no, but I can do that. I can be better in this area, and I will. So I think if you can just bring a certain level of patience and understanding, compassion to your like, motivated, like, let's get this done energy, which is super important as well. A little bit of push pull, yin and yang, will make you a slightly more integrated person.
Hmm.
And maybe that's bringing some of the feminine into being more masculine.
It's interesting point. I was going to ask, do you believe that we live in more of a masculine feminine world where the man is more feminine and the woman is more masculine?
In New York, yeah. New York's a very masculine city.
For both genders.
Yeah. Yeah. You get out there and it's about making your presence known and like get out of my way or I'm gonna like, I think that could be tiring for some women. It could also be very exhilarating for some women too, to be able to tap into their more masculine side or masculine energy or something.
I feel like it's definitely could be more. It could definitely be tiring for the men as well.
Yeah.
In that regard, because you need to outweigh the scale in some way, and when you're trying to, like at that point, is it just the men need to out masculine the woman, or is it at that point? Do you believe that the feminine needs to be more feminine and step into the feminine energy?
Well, I don't think the feminine can step into the feminine energy until they feel safe.
Hmm.
And I don't think they feel safe in New York. Yeah, certain cities just have more masculine energies to them, right? Like New York is a very masculine city. Somewhere like Bali, that's more tropical, is probably more feminine.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but yeah, it does get. Yeah, I don't know. I've been in the city for 8 years. I remember when I first moved here, I was very intimidated by everybody. I was just like, wow, everyone's like on their grind and on their purpose and on their mission. And over time, I both felt stronger within myself and stopped caring and cared less about the rat race that everybody was running. Because, yeah, but yeah, I mean, but I'm also grateful for the opportunity to like kind of grow myself in New York because like I wouldn't have this opportunity in any other city.
Yeah. There's a famous J. Cole quote. If you can, well, it's in the song called New York Times, and 50 Cent, there was like an ad lib where he's like, if you can win in New York City, you can win anywhere.
Yeah.
And I truly feel like if you can win in this type of energy, in this type of environment, doesn't matter where you go after that.
Yeah. But to do it in a way that you come out of it ultimately a more integrated, whole, loving, compassionate, empathetic, like both the feminine and the masculine, whatever we want to talk about, like as opposed to just like completely dominating. I think is the ideal situation to be in because you ultimately will be of more service and then you'll probably be happier too.
Yeah. If I would have seen, Eric at 25, 26, 27, going through that crisis, and I was just, just in the corner, what would I have seen?
I think someone who is just very lost, who is very confused. Didn't know who he was or what he wanted or his place in the world. And so in response to that was just kind of like doing a bunch of things, activities to like justify his own significance and existence and to begin to like try to create meaning out of things. So like maybe like dating a lot and trying to, pick up women or whatever, or actually that was mainly it. I don't know. There's a ton of other things I was doing, but like, I just remember when I first came to the city, it was just like a lot of that because I didn't really know what I wanted or who I was. And, doing that and achieving success in that area made me feel like I was worthy and enough. But I think from the outside, if you kind of knew me at least a little bit, you would know that I wasn't being very authentic. I was just like, I was just doing the thing to try to be cool, I guess. I don't know.
Did you not feel lovable during that time?
No, of course not. Of course not.
It's pretty hard. Do you feel like that you need to be able to love yourself to love others? Like, do you think it's all right, I can love myself and now I can give love to others?
Yeah, 100%. Uh, Two greatest commandments. First one is love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. Second one is love others as you love yourself. As you love yourself. So it implies that, there needs to be a certain degree of self-love and compassion for you to exhibit the same to other people. Because otherwise it wouldn't be genuine. Otherwise what you're doing is you're seeking love from them with your actions. You're seeking validation, or you're seeking some sort for them to fill some sort of hole you're doing. So any act you do is coming from that place. But if you love yourself and your heart is whole and full, the energy is going like that. But if you're not good, then your energy is like pulling it, and that's not very loving.
Is that how you view love now?
What's that?
Is that how you view love now? Like how coming out of that relationship and then, from that point at 26, 27, how has that view changed of love?
The view has not changed. I think I always knew it. I just didn't know how to do it when I was younger, because I just had to do a lot of the inner work.
Do you ever feel lonely in the way that you think? The way I want to frame this question is, I often, whenever I'm pulling apart these complex ideas and philosophies, or overthinking about whatever is on my mind, why are we even here? Or what is the purpose of life? Or is there even a God? And I know our pre-recording, we talked about a little bit about religion, which I want to get into. Have you ever felt lonely in terms of that nobody has ever understood you?
I think I know what you're getting at, but the feeling that I feel is not loneliness. I think loneliness comes from a lack of connection. So, to the extent the ideas that I have disconnect me from other people, then yeah. But if anything, if I'm starting to think about something or look at things in a certain way that other people aren't, I kind of like that, because it means that I'm special, or my thoughts are special, or that like I have something unique to offer. So it doesn't create a sense of loneliness in me. It just creates a sense of like curiosity. Like, oh, I wonder how other people see this. And that's why I do these interviews partly. But yeah, does you feel a sense of loneliness?
I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if loneliness is the right word. But I think the goal, sometimes I ponder on the human existence, and what is this thing all for, right? Like, I saw an interview with Lex Fridman and Elon Musk. It was either Lex Fridman and Elon Musk, or Joe Rogan and Elon Musk, and he was talking to him about how his brain never shuts off. 2 a.m. in the morning, he's still thinking about certain things, right? Like, there's a sense of avoidance there, but there's also a sense of like, man, can anybody understand this guy? And can anybody see through this guy in what he's trying to say, or the ideas, or the thoughts or philosophies that come to his brain? And partially is, you hope that somebody else would be curious enough to question those ideas, or at least sit there and be interested in the ideas. Which I find myself needing that more, because it's not there, right? Like, the thoughts that I have, or the philosophies that I have, at points do make me feel special, and I say that with no arrogance, but I don't feel understood mostly because of that. Because there's not enough curiosity from other people, because I can write it down, right? I could journal it, but I think it's one thing to write it to yourself, but it's another to express it to another human individual.
What's one thought you have difficulty expressing to another individual because you're afraid that they might reject you?
There's a couple things that come to mind, but I guess the first one that came to mind is expressing to other individuals that I will have the greatest podcast in the world someday. And I genuinely believe that. That seems to be a difficulty for me, because I think there's and there's more conviction to that than just, like saying that. There's a deeper, I often feel deeply, like I don't say that because I'm saying it for somebody to believe in me. I feel that because when I have conversations like these and I talk about things that people don't really want to talk about, or that they may be talking about it, but not to the level of some of the conversations I've had. But when I feel during these sessions that it's like purpose. Have you ever seen the movie, the Disney movie? What's it called? I forgot what it's called. Can't think of it right now. But waiting for the rest of the world, or waiting for the rest of the world to see this product, and not having the resources to promote that product. It's like when I reached out to you, or I've reached out to any other big guests that I've had, there's a certain level of that I want to showcase the ability, or showcase the ideas, or showcase the way of thinking and the conversations that I hope more people would be able to see. So that I feel that during these interviews, or during these conversations, that people could see it too. But I don't have the resources or the reach enough to get those certain things that I want and so desire.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, through these podcasts, you feel like you tap into some greater levels of truth and depth and magic and wonder that probably makes you feel alive and makes you feel like you're onto something, and makes you feel on your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes you feel like you're going to have the greatest podcast in the world one day, because you have this kind of intangible thing that you experience in these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And you're afraid, or you're you don't want to express that. I mean, I think I think it's more about the delivery. I think you just have to go like a layer underneath because like I will have the greatest podcast in the world can come off as for another person like as arrogant or prideful, because that's a tall statement. But if you go down the deeper level, the personal level of like why you think that, like, hey, I'm having these conversations and it's really opening up my world. It's helping me see myself in new ways. It's helping me connect with others. And whenever I do it, I feel very on purpose and alive. And that's why I think I'm going to have the greatest podcast in the world one day. Like, I feel like you say that to a person, they'll be like, okay, cool. But if you just start with, I'm going to have the greatest podcast in the world one day, that's a little bit, it kind of feels like a defense wall kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think, anyways, back to what you were saying about the loneliness thing. A lot of communication is like learning how to communicate in a way where the other person can understand what you're trying to say. And maybe you feel the loneliness because they don't understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah, a lot goes on up there. And sometimes, I don't know if you feel this, but maybe it could just be me, but whenever you're thinking about an idea or something and you're trying to communicate something, it's just like your mind goes like this. Like your thoughts, at least mine, just go racing.
Mm.
And like even that explanation took a lot because there's like thoughts coming everywhere.
I think we get better at it over time.
Yeah.
Just takes practice to communicate.
Yeah.
Simplify.
What would you say that your whole goal is with what you do on a day-to-day basis? Besides the human storytelling, besides the stories that you want to bring out of others.
I think I just want to show the beauty of the world to itself. I can't say I'm somebody who's always like, the moment I step out the door, I'm like, oh, life is beautiful. You know, some people are just like, oh, life is so beautiful. I'm not really like that. I wish I were. But I generally do think life is, you know, whatever, beautiful. But yeah, when I'm just able to capture a moment and then put into a video format, throw on some really nice music, and it's just like, wow, life is so beautiful, or something like that. Like, that's my feeling of what you get when you get into a good conversation of like feeling like you discovered some little piece of gold. You've uncovered it. You were in the mountains, in the river, looking for gold, little nuggets of gold, and you found one. And I'm just looking for gold. I think there's something where I want to talk about God in here, where I'm like, I'm doing this to show the beauty of God. And in a way, by showing the beauty of life, I show the beauty of God as well. But I think to say I'm trying to show how God is beautiful is a little bit of a tall thing to do. It might be bordering on arrogance. But yeah, I think generally speaking, just trying to show the beauty of the world. If I can show a fraction of what God might be doing in this world and how he might be working in people, that's pretty cool too.
I think that's why I love your work so much.
Mm.
So much evil, and you know, I'm not somebody who really watches the news as much, but you know, there's so much evil around the world currently and things that are going on that it's so easy to showcase that. And it's so easy to just, it's literally right there. You could just turn it on. But how many of us turn on a good channel? Like,
yeah.
When I say good channel, I mean like an actually good channel.
Yeah, people need hope, but they need like genuine hope too. Like they can't be fabricated, because it's just like you're just duping people. But if it's genuine moment of hope and inspiration, it's very lovely.
It's like a part of you feels like there is good in the world, or it's salvageable to be good.
Yeah. And I think the older I get, the more I see that. And I think a lot of the good I see in the world and the good I see in others comes from the good I see in myself. And a lot of the good I see in myself comes from all this shit I've gone through, you know, and going through it all, and holding on to God, and holding on to my faith, and just somehow being resilient and keeping on going. Yeah, I think for someone to be able to go through, and I have not, but for someone to be able to go through some really dark times and still see some light and goodness, like that's probably very invaluable.
Is there darkness that's inside of you though?
Yeah, of course. There's darkness inside everybody.
What is that? What is that darkness?
Um,
If that's something you feel comfortable sharing.
Oh, you mean like something specific? I was thinking more like just general fear and sin and brokenness and feeling of being unloved. Um, I'm not sure. I feel like I can come up with some answers like I'm selfish, I'm prideful, I'm arrogant, I'm closed off, I can be standoffish. Um, I have moments of jealousy, envy, and bitterness, but like, is that really darkness? What is darkness? Hmm. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't have darkness. Maybe we don't have darkness because things like selfishness or conceitedness or pride or sin or evil or whatever with all that stuff within us, does that really make us dark? Um, if I believe in a loving Father and a God who has made us right, then in a way I don't have darkness. I'm not perfect, and there's a lot of things that aren't right about me. But actually, maybe I do believe that the Bible says that we are washed white as snow. Like our sins have been forgiven. Like our stains are no longer there. So if that's the case, then maybe I don't have darkness. I don't know. Maybe in a way I do and I don't. Like, yeah, whatever. It gets maybe theological that goes beyond my pay grade or understanding.
I do wonder about that though. Like, what is darkness?
Mm.
Because all the things that you listed are human emotions, right? Like it's a human emotion to feel envy. It's a human emotion to feel jealousy or anger or arrogance, right? Like all those are emotions that are expressed into,
Right. Of which many are like from the stories we've lived,
yeah.
as we discussed earlier. Perhaps a good benchmark for darkness is a level of awareness. So someone who's extremely unaware and not present is probably in darkness. Someone who's addicted to something, someone who's like a zombie almost or something. Not I'm not saying like a mentally whatever, but just like some people are just not really alive in a way.
Yeah.
Life is probably a better instead of rather than asking like, or if you have darkness, is like, do you have life? It's probably a better something that we could play with more.
Mm. I do want to go into your faith, faith in God. I think it's pretty relevant here. You described that you were a lukewarm Christian, and that through the experiences, through the things that you've been through, you found the faith. Was there like a moment? Was there something that's like, you expressed that you were doing it your way and that way wasn't working? Was there like a trivial moment that you were like, here he is, or here is the faith that let you know God was real?
I think for me, it was more that he was always there, and I always believed he was there. I just didn't always believe that he actually had my best interests, or that his way was actually the best way or the better way. So I guess in a way that is a lack of belief in a God, because by definition, if I believe in God, I believe in something, in a omnipresent, super intelligent, high whatever being, which I guess in a way I didn't. But yeah, I think I was just like a petulant child. I just didn't want to obey him, and just did things my way and ignored the sort of my conscience or whatever. Like I was just like, yeah, screw it, until I just reached such level of unawareness, such level of darkness, I guess, or whatever, that I was in a lot of pain. And I was just like, okay, it's like, you put your hand on a frying pan and you burn it. You're never going to do it again. That's what it kind of felt like. I was like, okay, I went and did my stuff and it did not work. So let's do it your way. But I always believe in God. Perhaps I went through moments of like kind of wrestling it from a philosophical, logical basis or whatever in high school. But once I went through that, I was always like, maybe it was just, if it just made sense to me, maybe it was easy for me. Maybe God made it easy for me to believe in God.
I think sometimes I wrestle with the idea it's hard to believe in a God when people can do terrible things and inhumane things, right? Like it's easy to believe in a God when somebody becomes it's easy to believe in a God when somebody can become an addict to rehab and feel and recover, right? It's easy to believe in a God when
there's a happy ending.
Yeah. But it's hard to believe in a God when
it's all darkness.
Stalin or Hitler does so many inhumane things. It's very hard then. And then it begs the question, does God live in all of us or does it live in some?
If you operate from a worldview that two answers to that. The first is more theological. The biblical understanding is that the world was created good, and then there was a fall in the Garden of Eden. So, like, the world is not as it should be. Things are broken, and I think if you read the news at all, you can agree with that the world is not the way it should be. So, if people are broken and the world is broken, then there will be suffering. It's that's a sort of theological explanation for it. The second part is simply yes, yeah. And I think, in the book of Job, what Job kind of demonstrates to us is he lost everything. Do you know the story of Job?
Not too much, no.
Well, how it goes is like Job has a wife, many kids, a lot of wealth. He's like a good dude, very faithful. And God's like, hey, Satan, look at this guy. Like, he's good. Like, he's one of my favorite students. And the devil's like, well, that's only because he has a good life and he has all the good things going for him. Like you said earlier, like it's easier to believe in God when things are good. So God's like, okay, fine, go ahead and see how you want to change this. And so the devil kills all his kids and takes all his possessions away, and there's just a tragedy after the tragedy, and by the end of it, Job has like nothing, and he's just like wearing a sackcloth. And the rest of the book is him like lamenting to God, like, God, I've done all the good things. I've been a good human. Why has this happened to me? Even his wife is just like, you should just curse God and die. His friends are like, certainly you did something wrong at some point for you to deserve all these things and all this suffering. And he's like, no, I really haven't. And the entire book of Job is just kind of all these different ideas we're talking about. Like, is it because they did something bad that they got the suffering? Or like, if they're suffering, then you should just, God doesn't exist, just curse them and be done with it, and it doesn't really give any answer, the Bible, to kind of these core fundamental questions. But God does come out at the end and he says, do you know the Leviathan? Do you know the Behemoth? Do you know the foundations of the earth I create? Like, do you know the extent to this universe? Like, are you God, basically? Do you know everything? And coming face to face with God, Job is something like, nope, I'm sorry. I was kidding. He lost everything, right? And now he just got humbled instantly by God. So I think to a certain extent, like, we don't. There's so much we do not know. Actually, that's the biggest understatement of the year. Like, there's so much we don't know. Like, what we know is like a fraction of like, what it is. So like, we're looking at a very, 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 very narrow view. We see the sufferings of this world. We see the tragedies and the calamities, and we're like, how can God exist? But that's a very narrow POV. If there is a God, then his POV is infinite.
That's interesting.
Which again, it does not. You tell that to someone whose child is dying in the hospital or has cancer or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter what I just said, but fundamentally, though, at the end of the day, it's God lives in the mind, and God also like lives in the spirit, and also like the heart. And a lot of what the book of Job shows us is like you can bring all these things to God. Job was complaining for like 75% of the book. You can ask God, like, WTF, like, why is all this stuff happening in this world? If you exist, why does this happen? And if you like genuinely bring it to him in an open way, that's where that's where I think the real kind of formation happens. Because I don't think we're gonna get the answers to these questions, but it's like the wrestling of it, the grappling. Maybe that's when you begin to discover your purpose. Maybe that's when you begin to feel more masculine and confident.
I do wonder about that, and that's a good story, because I do often wonder about that, is that why do good things happen to bad people? Or why do bad things happen to good people? And that story kind of it doesn't explain it in its entirety or in full, but to some degree there's, from what it sounds like, that the bad things can still exist to good people.
Yeah.
Like even Jesus was crucified, and he was a pretty good guy,
He was the best, yeah. Yeah, I feel like when I look at my life, I'm like, dude, nothing bad has really ever happened to me. Like, all my sufferings have. Actually, I take that back. Like, that's not an accurate thing to say, but I would just say, like, I haven't, knock on wood, experienced like a tragedy of that sort. Like, a lot of it's just been my own kind of stupidity or whatever. But I do, like, this past week I threw my back while doing squats, and I was just the first night my back, I was just in pain. I was like crawling on the ground, and I remember thinking in that moment, like, like, the thought is like, why me? Like, God, are you doing this because I did something bad? Like, was it because I said that one thing to that one person that then this thing happened? It was just interesting to see where all my thoughts went, and how I tried to make sense of the situation, because I was in a lot of pain, and to be able to make sense of it would at least bring some level of certainty that I didn't have at the time. I was afraid that would need surgery or whatever. And I was just trying to like justify it to myself so that I could be like, how do I avoid this in the future? Okay, don't say that mean thing to the whatever, or but yeah, I hurt my back, through my back. I was like, I think a part of me was upset with God, like, God, like, I have so much work to do. Why did you allow this to happen? Part of me was very confused, and part of me was hurt. Part of me was like, God, I thought you loved me. Why did you allow this to happen? Mind you, I did this to myself, right? By not following proper squat form or whatever, and working out when I was tired. Anyways, that's all to say that having come out of it now, I just realized like a lot of my thoughts in that moment were kind of limited. And wasn't the best like angle. I was just so focused on the pain, I guess.
Yeah, because also in that too, like how you said, like, God, is it because I did this or is it because I did that? And there's so much self-analyzation, to a degree, to an extent, being self-critical and analyzing everything that you've done within the past week. And is this your quote unquote karma, or is this something that was handed to you or given to you? And at least sometimes, or some people that I do see on my feed that is in regards to religion, it can create that self-analytical or self-critical version of you,
Yeah.
where you're looking at every decision, you're looking at everything that you've ever done, and it's like, damn, that one sentence, am I going to heaven, or am I going to the land?
I never struggle with that. I never doubt whether or not my soul is saved, because, well, I probably do, but like, mostly I don't, just because in my belief, when you believe that Jesus has died for your sin, then that's pretty final. Me, if Moses, who murdered someone, David, who also murdered someone, maybe even possibly raped, but if these men are like some of the top players in the Bible, and I'm guessing they went to the promised land, yeah, I'm not going to question myself more. But yeah, while I don't get feelings of like, am I getting to heaven, thoughts of, am I getting to heaven, I do get thoughts of like, am I loved? When I experience pain and suffering, the immediate thought is like, oh shit, I don't think God loves me anymore. If anything, that might be some of the darkness that we were talking about earlier. Like, that might be some form of darkness.
I guess I would love to. I'll play devil's advocate here. If your faith in God is so high, wouldn't you have an understanding and a knowing that He loves you, even if those bad things happen to you? Or is there still like distrust? Is there still not enough trust there?
I don't know if my faith in God is so high. I just know it grows and grows.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's very high. If anything, from this my little backthrown story, it's revealed to me it's not that strong. Faith is revealed. Faith is given to us by God. So yes, if I did have absolute faith, I would not be thinking those things, and I would not be wondering if God loves me. It's just that's not true. I'm still human. I'm still going to have these thoughts. If something bad happens, I'm going to think maybe I've lost something. However, I think where faith comes in is even when I do kind of begin to doubt, because it's natural to doubt, I still hold on to the truth. I still say, hey, God still loves me. God's still supreme. And He's still the man, even though I don't feel it right now. There is something, and even if I don't even think it, there's a spirit level that goes beyond the body and the mind that can say, okay, I think yeah, there's some truth here. The famous scene, Jesus, before He goes to give Himself to the authorities to be crucified, He's in the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows what's about to happen. He's been prophesying himself that this thing is about to happen. He knows it needs to happen for the salvation of all mankind and the entire universe. And yet in that moment, He's like really struggling and really struggling to like basically go through all of that. And even in at the cross, one of His final words were like, my God, why have you forsaken me? Which is an allusion, which is referring to one of the Psalms where David says one of the same things while King David, he's being like chased by his enemies or something. He's like, I think, hiding in a cave, and he's just like, my God, why have you forsaken me? And so it's very possible to approach God with the sense of, God, where are you? Why is this happening to me? Why is my back being thrown? Why am I not able to do the things I want to do? And You're still God. I will still hold on to You. I will still obey you. I will still trust you. I think that's faith.
Yeah. It's a good way to think about it, because there will always be that duality of emotions, or on both spectrums. Like, why is this happening? And then I have this knowing that you are still there and you are still real and you are still present in my life.
Yeah. And a lot of that knowing comes from you expressing to God, why have you forsaken me? And that's the part a lot of people miss. They don't come to God with it, and then they lose their faith because they never went to God with it, with their doubts. So are you more agnostic or atheist, or?
No, definitely not atheist. I do believe there's something up there.
And your background is, are you Jewish or?
I grew up practicing Judaism. I don't currently practice Judaism. And it's funny that you say that. And I believe we did get into this, that I've always approached God when I needed something instead of out of appreciation for what was done.
Okay.
So I've always reached out to, I've always like looked at the ceiling and just, I need you right now,
Yeah,
and that's not faith, right? That's not, there's nothing that will benefit that. That's just, if anything, that's a one-sided relationship. You're going to that person to when you need them, but you're not going to them when things are great. And you're not practicing gratitude and appreciation when, damn, like I just had Eric on the podcast and he was such an incredible guest. Like,
pretend for a second you're a dad and you had a kid, and your kid was only coming to you when he needed help, and your kid wasn't saying things like, thank you, Dad, for taking me to school. Thank you, Dad, for buying dinner tonight. How would you feel as a dad?
feel pretty hurt.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would feel be very conditional under the conditions that are currently, of which I can provide, of which I can give. That is what I am loved for, and that is what I am appreciated for.
Yes, I think that is true. I think, though, I'm not a father myself, but I would imagine, at least for me, if I had a kid and he never said thank you, and he was only just coming to me with his problems, that's not ideal, right? Maybe there is a better situation, but I'd rather him come to my problems than not come to me at all. And for him to say thank you to me is really a little bit less about me needing like him to say thank you to me, because I'm doing it out of unconditional love for my kid. I'm doing it because I want to. I would die for my kid. So me taking him to the school is like, it's cool, dude, no big deal. But for him to show gratitude, I would appreciate that. But it would also be for him just to feel like grateful for the life he has. For him to show me gratitude would be for him to like recognize that he is loved. And that's something that I would want him to feel, for him to feel like that he is loved. Like, him not showing gratitude is I'm more concerned about his well-being than mine. I'm more concerned that he doesn't feel like he has a great life. If he generally doesn't feel any gratitude in his heart, then I'm like, dude, that sucks. Like, you're probably not a happy person. But anyways, going back to what you were saying, but yes, to only go to God with your complaints and your needs is not a full depth of the relationship you can have with him. But it's totally cool to do that too, especially when you really need him.
So I guess maybe I've had a bad understanding of when to go and when not to go.
And a lot of it comes from just our own relationships with our own parents, because like our parents are kind of our gods growing up. So like we base a lot of it on that, and also just like societal whatever growing up. If God is love and God is a fullest manifestation of love, I don't know. It would be, I think our views on this would be a little bit different. But I do think that's a really good awareness that you have. I just don't know if like too much remorse or guilt is valuable there, but more just like an openness and awareness that, oh, okay, maybe instead of like praying to God about my needs today, which I do all the time, I'm going to pray for a friend, or I'm just going to sit here and spend time with him, with my dad. We're going to go fishing together. I don't know, whatever.
How do you spend time with him? In your thoughts?
It could be your thoughts, your breath. You quiet yourself down and talk to him, an awareness. You could try to listen, which I'm still learning. Like, it's not going to be like he's gonna, I am God, and you suddenly hear him. But, you know, in my mornings, like just this morning as well, my quiet time, sometimes I'll read the Bible, but sometimes I'm able to just sit there and I'm just like basking in his warmth and his love, which is pretty sick. It wasn't always like this. It wasn't like that right from the get-go. It took time of like walking on this path with him, being obedient over and over, sacrificing certain things, going. It's like a relationship with a human being. Like, you had to go through stuff. But there's fruit on the other side of it. And I've come to a point now where like I could just be still and think about God and think about how much he loves me and get like a warm, vibey feeling from that. I wasn't able to do that before. Before, it was just like a mental kind of, okay, God, whatever. But and I imagine this only grows, which is pretty exciting.
Yeah. It's definitely good to look forward to. Definitely Well, you definitely shifted my perspective in that regard.
What shift?
Just I sit with my thoughts a lot. I sit in meditation and silence a lot. So maybe I've been communicating to him, or communicating in some regard, because if there's stillness, if there's awareness, then you're able to listen, or you're able to kind of get that download, of what are you trying to tell me right now? Or maybe I'm expressing my thoughts to you and maybe you're listening. And I guess it's that shift of like, I guess from what I've explained and elaborated on, is that it's this feeling of, oh, I need to speak to you every day, or like, oh, I need to come to you with this every day. And kind of how you shifted that was, maybe it's just, you come to him when you need to him, but like just spending some alone time with him as well is also sufficient. And I'm still searching for that. Like I'm still searching for what that means to me, or what faith I want to put my trust in. There's a lot of religions that I look at from an outer perspective, in terms of, one is Buddhism that I look at, and there's some of it resonates with me and some of it like deeply sits with me, and some of it I could align myself with, and then
what's the part you don't?
I wouldn't really consider Buddha a god, right? Like, he's just
I don't think Buddha said he was a god either.
Yeah. I guess it's just there's no figure there that's like you can put your trust into. It's like all suffering, from my understanding of it, is that the suffering that is there are partially our own, and life is in itself is suffering, right? It's the quietness to enlightenment. It's the journey to enlightenment. But there's no faith, there's no relationship there with a higher being. There's just a relationship with yourself at that point.
Yeah.
And then
it can feel a bit voidy.
Yeah. We've used that word a lot today. void. And then there's like these other things, and maybe it's just something from childhood where I'm practicing a faith that I don't really truthfully believe in, and so I'm believing in things and all these events that happened. And number one, I look for truth, like how do we know this is possible? How do we know this is real? And the question of like science with the whole like Big Bang theory and all of that, like there's a wrestle between truth and what actually happened, and the uncertainty and unknowingness of what actually happened that I struggle with.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what a lot of kids face as well in terms of religion. I don't think it's, from my point of view and the way I've lived life, is I think it's unfair to throw a religion at a 2-year-old kid because they don't even know what they're believing in, right? Like they're just playing. That's the time where play and imagination should run rampant. And if how I was thrown into the fire of a religion that as I got older I disconnected with.
There's a lot of bad religion out there, which is unfortunate because it disconnects a lot of people from God. A lot of things that people think the Bible's saying, but the Bible doesn't actually mean it that way. A lot of ways people have been hurt by religion, but not by God, but by people who say they believe in God. Mm-hmm. All that stuff. I also struggled with the no sex before marriage thing. And that's why I like fell away in my college years, because I was like, no, I can't. Like, this is not something that I can. I'm sorry. And I remember like the more I was like sleeping with my girlfriend at the time, the more I felt disconnected from God, because I like knew that this was something he wanted me to do, but I was just like, I couldn't. I was just like, nah, like you can't. And eventually, again, what made me slowly change my mind was when I hit that low point when I was like, okay, I've been doing things my way and like it has not worked, and shit hit the fan. And there was a small pivot from where I was like, okay, maybe this is something that I might be able to give you some dominion over my sexuality, but also like other parts of my life as well. Actually, the whole of my life. I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, Jesus does say like before you go build something, you should like make sure you have all the resources that you need. And so before you go and believe in a God or follow a religion, you should be like, hey, is this something that I could reasonably give up? So it is a good thing to think about. I guess the sentiment I'm trying to communicate is like, for you to not believe in something because it would be difficult for you to believe it. Like if you were to believe in God and that means you can't have sex before marriage, and that's the reason you don't believe in God, that's not truth-based, right? That's just like you want to have sex, which is, that's a human thing, but just to be aware that dynamic exists. Because like if it's like the reason you don't believe in God is because you don't want to surrender your life, then that's like its own thing. That's like not related to science or evolution or any other hiccups that you can have about religion.
Yeah,
God.
There's also like questions of morality there, like what happens after. Like I've thought about that, mortality. But I've thought about that a lot. Like what happens after we die, and if I'm giving,
Well, what happened after Jesus died?
Went to heaven.
Before he went to heaven.
That part I'm not too sure.
3 days after he was crucified, he was raised from the dead. That's what Easter celebrates. rising from the tomb. So he died. He was crucified. 3 days later, he was resurrected, and he started like basically teleporting around the world and like appearing to his disciples, and they saw him. They couldn't quite recognize him though. Like he would be walking alongside people who knew him, and they didn't recognize him until like he called their name or something. He said their name, or he broke bread, or he did something where he finally revealed himself, and then they recognized him. But he was a body. He was a physical body. He did say, "Hey, Thomas, put your hand through the hole of my, through my holes." So like, so what if you believe in Jesus? What happens after you die? Well, you get a body. You get another body, and I guess you get a teleport. Maybe that'd be sick. But you get a body, and I'm guessing you look a little bit different. Maybe like, your nose is like more like nicely shaped. Your hairline's all good. You got a 6-pack going on. No, the Bible says that there will be at the final thing where everything's kind of put back together. When the broken pieces are put back together, we will be given new spiritual, physical bodies. They'll be both physical, which we have now, but also spiritual. What that means, I don't know. I'm really hoping that we can fly. If we can fly, I'm pretty good with that. That's all I've ever wanted to do. I could just like fly. But yeah, that's the biblical belief. I think like when it comes down to it, there's only so many religions in the world, unless you want to start making your own religion. But if you look at these existing ones, it's going to be Buddhism, or it's going to be one of the Abrahamic religions, which is Judaism, Islam, or Christianity. And all these religions, if you go and study them, Christianity, in my opinion, is the only one that has the best answers to the toughest questions in life. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What happens after we die? Why is there suffering in the world? That kind of stuff. Like, we may not have, like, I don't know what it means to have a physical spiritual body. I can read it in the text. I have no idea. But that's not my place to know right at this point in time. But at least like Christianity provides answers to these questions that go like, okay, there's enough here that I can live with it now and make the best decision for myself now. I may not know the full picture. I may not know what happens after I die, or really what the point of life is, I may not really know, but I have semblances of revelation and truth and knowledge, at least some explanations that like, I'm like, oh, this feels right. This feels right, not just because like I sit and believe it, because over time, through many years of like practicing anything, like you put it to the test and you're like, okay, this like you have a growing relationship with God, and it's like this growing living thing within you. Yeah. Fundamentally, every other religion that's not Christianity, every other, I'm about to say some pretty perhaps strong statements that I hope are true, but any other worldview besides Christianity, any other religion besides Christianity, fundamentally says that if you do good, you will go to heaven. If you do good, you will become enlightened. You will reach that next stage, nirvana, whatever it may be. If you do good, you will go to paradise where there will be 72 virgins for you, waiting for you. Poor virgins. But that, and society tells you, if you do good, good things will happen to you. If you do good, you will not suffer. That's why when I threw my back, I'm like, oh God. Logically, mentally, that's just like we have this correlation between just like the very essence of life is just to grind it out and do good, and like good things, and that's how that's how you're loved. Do good and you will be loved. That is fundamentally how we're wired, even from a child, right? Like if you study, if you do your dishes, I will love you. That's just how parenting is. Like, if you don't make me mad, I will love you. So like we're fundamentally wired that way. We have religions telling us that, and the Bible does say like, if you follow my commandments, good things will happen to you. So like there is a general sort of relationship between your actions and good things happen to you. Yes. But ultimately, fundamentally, what the Bible says, what Jesus says, is that our good deeds are like dirty rags. That's a thing in the Bible. Like, if God is 100% perfect, 100% loving, 100% pure, uh, me giving a homeless guy $5 is like not comparable to that. I guess what I'm trying to say is, God, that's such a long-winded way to say what I'm trying to say. The fundamental misconception with the Bible is that people think if you do good, you go to heaven. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that we all deserve to go to hell because we are broken people. We have fallen short. We are not the way we were designed to be. And people do not enjoy being told they're broken. I don't like being told I'm broken. But if you're not aware of your current state and kind of how you kind of function, then you're probably not stepping on the right foot. What the Bible says is, what the Bible says is that God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son to pay the prices for our sins. The Bible says that God loves you. And the Bible says that there's nothing you can do to make God love you more or God love you less. The Bible is saying that love cannot be earned. All the other worldviews and religions are saying that love is earned. And when you approach life from a mentality that love is earned, that's when a lot of these problems come up of like, why am I not enough? Why does God still love me after I threw my back? And the Christian journey, the Christian faith is coming to a place where you truly, 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 as much as possible, believe that God does love you no matter what you do. And that Jesus did die for your sins and that you are washed white as snow and that in his eyes, you're already perfect. If you could truly believe that and manifest that on a day-to-day level, yeah, that would be great. And in my, I would say like 8, 9, 10 years of like intentionally walking with the Lord now, I'm getting a little bit closer to that each day. And I would imagine that someone who's been walking longer, like if you could really, truly just manifest that in your being, you might be able to give up sex before marriage.
Very interesting. It's very interesting.
But it's so counterintuitive that I'm telling you these things now, I still don't believe it. There's still a part of me that believes that if I do good, God will love me more. How could God love me just the way I am? That will take the rest of my life to fully accept and believe. Embody, I can believe it and be like, yeah, God loves me, but like to really embody it, like I feel like my life would be different. I would approach things a lot differently.
We've talked about, a lot of the things that you've alluded to is feeling loved and feeling all that. And I guess a part of me wants to know, like, did you feel loved as a kid?
Yeah. I grew up as an only child, and I was loved very deeply by my parents. However, it was and still continues to be a little bit of emotional disconnect with my father and I. Like, he didn't have that from his father growing up, so like I never really had any sort of masculine vulnerability with my father. My mother was the one that kind of provided more of that nurturing and that caring. So there's a little bit of imbalance with how I receive and perceive love from that kind of lens. Um, there was also a very strong focus of like, because we were an immigrant family living in California, like grades were the most important thing. So I was very performance focused. Like performance is like ingrained within me in terms of like equating that to love, which is why I kind of struggle with this belief that God can love me no matter if I don't perform well. And if I don't perform well, I assume that's because I did something wrong. So that's just those are things that are ingrained within me. But when I listen to other people's stories talk about their parents, I'm like, oh dude, no, my parents loved me. Like they were not perfect parents, but they loved me, and I'm very grateful to have had them. Mm-hmm. But part of my work has been, as you get older, I've gotten older, is to begin to learn at the holes of the kind of their love, and then begin to patch those in on my own with God's help. Like, oh, okay, because my dad wasn't as emotional with me, like, that has kind of hurt my own self-esteem. Like I think when sons don't get love from their fathers, it kind of hurts their own sense of like self-esteem or self-worth or something. Okay, got it. That makes sense. Let me work on this. And then practically speaking, let me just begin to call my dad and just have conversation with him, because I know he loves me. He just, we just don't do it. We just don't talk about it. So like, let me begin to do this sort of work to kind of patch in those holes. And then, you know, my mom and I have my own stuff. So these are stuff that I just like learned over time through therapy and doing work. And then, that begins to patch things up. And then now I even begin to wonder sometimes, like, am I putting too much blame on my parents for my deficiencies? You know, like I can't blame everything on them, which is something I feel like I'm slowly coming to now, where I'm like, you know, maybe they weren't that bad. Maybe they were actually pretty good. And that a lot of my hiccups are just like my own hiccups. I just have to figure out on my own, and I can't blame my parents for everything. But it is good to be aware of the dynamics that you had growing up.
I feel that. I felt that statement, the own deficiencies that we have.
Whether or not you are too much to other people or to someone is not something you can control. It's not something they can control either. Is it?
No.
They kind of feel how they feel about you, or respond to you how they respond to you, just because of their own personal preferences, maybe. Maybe they don't think that much as you do, so they don't understand.
That's fair.
It's possible.
Yeah.
Or they could just be a dick. But let's just say that they are a genuinely decent person, but they just don't jive with some of the things that you are. Is that something you can accept?
I think with due time, yeah.
How?
The only way I feel like you can accept it is understanding that this is who you are. To the fundamental breakdown of yourself.
So then I guess the next question is, why do you have difficulty accepting that that's who you are? Why can't you accept that that's who you are?
First thought that popped up, but I guess I'll run with it, is that I wish I was different.
So that what would happen?
Well, it's definitely not fun being up. It's not fun constantly being in your head about thinking about different things. And to some degree, obviously, I'm no Elon Musk or whatever. So I can't understand what he goes through, but to some degree, I could understand what he was saying in that statement. Where
Do you have ADHD? Is it ADHD or?
yeah, I was diagnosed with that as a little kid.
So you should get treatment for that. Do you have treatment for that? Have you seen someone for that and stuff?
Growing up, I did take medication. I stopped taking medication because I didn't like the way that it made me feel. I felt like kind of like a robot.
Mm. Yeah. I don't know anything about ADHD, but I imagine there's someone who has had ADHD or who does have ADHD who has learned to accept it about themselves. So, like, I guess what I'm saying is it's possible. There is a path towards you accepting the parts of you that are kind of annoying to yourself, not to other people, but like just that kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely annoying to it's annoying to overthink, and it's annoying to have this being afraid of vulnerability. Like it's annoying. It's annoying to me, or it's annoying to lack common sense. But I could think about the most philosophical or most deep thing, but I can't have common sense. Where's the degree in that? Like where's the deficiency there? It's like I can think about something to the depths of the ocean, but the most common sense of things, it makes you feel like common sense is not that common. And why was I gifted these? Why was, I don't even know if it's a gift, but why was I granted this mind of deep intricacy, but to the surface level of things, of understanding or behaving or understanding of social situations, that I can't show up in that way, or it's been hard for me to show up that way. Like, why is the biggest thing is like, fuck, like why is complex so easy for me but simple is so hard? Like if you're telling me, if somebody asked me something that could be answered so simply, why do I have to make it complex? Why do I have to make it this long, detailed thing? That's annoying. Like that's truthfully annoying to live with. So now you have to find people that can be able to understand that. And sometimes, you know, to the most surface level, it's possible, but I want to be surrounded by people that, or loved by people that, you know, it might not be so simple to me either. Like everything is kind of, there's a deeper description or a deeper detail. And I find solace and comfort in this conversation because I feel like, to some degree, you're that same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful the way you think. I think that's what God thinks too. We were all made in the image of God,
Mm-hmm.
like divine pieces of a mosaic. And so each of us hold a piece to one side of God. I mean, that's your hero's journey. That's the path that you have to kind of, that's the work you're doing is, I guess that we're all doing is like learning how to not just accept ourselves, but like, like I just feel like there's a way for you to play with this a little bit more in a way where like I say play so often with you. I feel like you need to play more, which is something my life coach tells me all the time. But
that's what I've been told a lot of my life.
Yeah,
everything is so serious.
Yeah. Have you traveled outside of the country before? Okay.
I play video games sometimes throughout the week. Played with one of my best friends yesterday. I think that's the time where I play, right? Like the gym is the time where I play. But sometimes even when I'm in the gym or caught up in the gym, it's just like it just goes, you know, the motor goes. I've noticed like if I'm doing cardio or if I'm doing like lifting some heavy shit, excuse my language, that's where my mind goes. And then I feel like something's wrong with me. I think the most time I feel misunderstood, or the most time I feel like what the fuck is wrong with me, is when it's a simple concept and I can't understand it. But if I can ask deep, intricate questions, or like, you know, make somebody think or whatever, like that's not easy to me. But it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I truthfully feel that it is a gift, though. That a little bit more added to the whole reason before of the podcast is that I do feel like there's a little bit of a gift there that I can be able to push maybe uncomfortable conversations or uncomfortable questions onto people that maybe think more deeply about themselves. And that's something I've been told.
I think people accept people who accept themselves, right? Like someone could be the most annoying person, but if they accept that about themselves, like you're like, oh, okay, that's fine. But like you can kind of feel when people don't accept themselves, and then you will play into that. You're like, all right, I guess I don't accept you either. Like it's a little bit difficult for me to accept someone who doesn't accept themselves, because like, how can you accept someone who doesn't accept themselves? That's like not loving in a way.
How do you do that?
You can't. I cannot accept someone who does not accept themselves, because by accepting someone who does not accept themselves, I'm accepting that they don't accept themselves, and that's not loving, right? So like,
it's like Inception.
Yeah. I think it's just human nature. You can't really accept someone who doesn't like accept themselves, because you're just like, no, I don't accept that. I don't accept that. Yeah, you are a piece of shit. Like, yeah, like I agree. You know. So I guess what I mean is like the room for play is just like, all right, like, yeah, I can't understand some simple stuff sometimes. I don't know why. I don't know what you mean by simple things, but like,
you want to know simple?
Sure.
I work at one of the jobs is I work at a pizzeria.
Yeah.
And giving back somebody change is the hardest thing for me.
Yeah.
Like so, it's simple, right? In terms of like, oh, if somebody gives you like.
So let me ask you, in that moment where you start struggling, what do you do?
I panic. Like mentally, I panic.
Yeah. Mentally,
it's like my boss. He's also like he's my friend too. He's a great guy, and he understands that. I'm like simple math. I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like you give me back a 20, like, and you're giving me 775. Like for me, it's like
it's like a black hole.
Yeah. Like that. I don't know. To some people, it's simple. To some people, it's not. Like, I don't know. That's just or somebody's telling me something, or they're asking me a simple question like, "Why did you do this?" And I have no answer.
I guess what I'm trying to get you to see or open your mind possibility to is that like, it doesn't matter that you can't give change back. Like, what matters more is your relationship to the whole thing, your relationship to your perceived weaknesses. If I'm the customer and I see you panicking while giving me change, I start feeling bad, because that's like negative energy, I guess, or I'll be like, yeah, what is this? Like, hurry up. Like, yeah, give me back. But if you're like working with your change and you're like, I'm sorry, this is so silly. This is so silly. Like I have trouble doing like basic math, and you just kind of play it off like that. Mm-hmm. For the customer, from me, I'd be like, dude, I care less. Take your time. Like, I'm in no rush. And it makes me like you more because like now you've exposed kind of like your weak spot, and it makes me feel better about the fact that my hair is balding, or like my hair's not balding, but like you know, some deficiency that I have, like that, you know, because like you just owned up to yours. I guess what I'm saying is that like you have this own self judgment and condemnation that you're placing on yourself that others aren't necessarily doing. Maybe some have. Maybe you have been bullied for it, and that's fair. But especially as you mature and people get older and they realize that nobody's perfect, like I'm not gonna look at a cash register and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, like I can't do basic math," and I'm not gonna be like, "Well, you should not be you are a worthless human." Like, no, I'm not gonna be like that. I'm be like, "Oh, dude, whatever. I don't care. Take your time. You know what? Keep the change." Like, you know.
Yeah.
But it's all about their relationship to it. If they're like, if they've accepted that about themselves and they're like, "Hey, like I'm sorry. I know this is something that's like bad about me, and if you hate that about me, that's totally fine. I understand that, but like I've accepted this, and I'm not perfect, and it's all good." If that's the kind of energy that comes off, it's actually kind of attractive than anything.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm talking about from vulnerability with women. Sometimes it could be really. I remember sometimes some of my first girlfriend. I was like, "What was the moment where you like were like cool with me?" She was like, "When you said that thing in the car about like." I admitted to her that I was like president of a fraternity at the time, and then I admitted that like I I sometimes get scared leading or something. I just exposed some vulnerable thing, and she was like, I was like, "What? That was the moment?" Like it was just a moment where I was just like myself, you know. But it's so hard to do because most of the time we're like, nope, we gotta be good at all times. We gotta be perfect at all times. But if you believe that you were loved and you know you were created and you were designed, like those kind of things help. But it is a process. You're 25. You're still young. I mean, you haven't been outside of the country. I could tell actually.
Yeah.
Like, so, but like, this is your. I'm not trying to diminish you, but this is your world, and the world is actually like that. And once the world is like that, your inability to count numbers is irrelevant.
I want to say thank you for this conversation. I hope that it was, enlightening to you. I hope that it was worth the 2 hours and 20 minutes for you.
It's very nice.
I enjoyed this conversation a lot. I learned some things about myself. I learned some things about you, and I learned some things about life that I could take with me. And I'd love to do this again sometime in the future, and hopefully at a different space. But where can the people find you on social media?
Eric Jeng, ERIC J3NG on Instagram.
Thank you guys for tuning in. If you came this far, like, comment, subscribe if you guys are new. Eric, thank you.